It's a little humid. We are in Alabama. I'm going to try and clean that a little bit. Does that hopefully help? Yeah, it looks like it did a little bit. The lens was kind of fogged up. So what I have done is I have cut out some pieces that will become extra material on the Angel Dragon. I'm actually just working on the outer layer right now. So on the belly side, I've cut the belly panel out. I've actually extended the height of the torso too. And I'm going to add in these sections to the left and right to basically expand the torso. So here's one, and I have a second one somewhere. Yeah, there we go. And these are actually mirror imaged. So let's try to match these up. What I should have done is wrote front, back, top, bottom, but I didn't do that. So I'm going to have to kind of figure this out real quick. So, okay, that's the right orientation. Now what I need to do is I'm going to take my blanket, stuff it back inside the torso, like I did just a minute ago, and figure out exactly how these pieces go in, since I did not mark them. So if you do this, you should definitely mark it. That is why this is an art, not necessarily a science. When I do this stuff, I kind of just improv as I go. You can follow a procedure. There's nothing wrong with that. I kind of do it improv and just work through problems as I get to them. Some people rather have, some set instructions to follow, and that's okay too. All right, so here I have a blanket, and it is stuffed in the torso to kind of make it poof out. And what I did earlier was I worked on this side right here. So let's figure out basically I was matching it up with following kind of the curve, and see that actually follows it right there. It follows it pretty well. So there's that side. Then this side over here should match up. Since it's a mirror image, it should match up with this. And what I'm kind of matching up is this curve of the belly. So now that I've got it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this with some tape. Let me find my painter's tape. And then I'm going to write, left, right, up, down. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue these things in place. So I got right and top pointed up, left top pointed up. So now that I've got those things labeled, I am going to pull my blanket back out. And then I'm going to get my jar, and I'm going to start working on one of these. I'll go ahead and work on the right side. Man, I can't wait to get this done so I can wear it. Pretty excited. Having a removable head is going to be pretty sweet. All right, before I get started, I want to make sure this hadn't ripped open more. So I'm just going to kind of lay it across, kind of spread this out the way it's going to be. Because if it's ripped further, then I don't want to start it at the point where it's ripped further, because then I'm going to be in trouble when I get further down that way. But it looks good. Looks like I did pretty good with that. I'm going to put this material, since it's white, the easiest way to do this is to put it underneath, because I don't want the white to overlap the blue, because then it's going to look weird. But because I'm doing that, I want to look at my seam before I start to see if there's any little bits that need to be cut off. Like I have some white material right here. I want my seams to look, real nice and straight. Don't want any ruffles or anything in it, because you're going to be able to see that. So you can kind of spend a little bit of time cleaning up the seam, since they're going to be visible. Alright, that looks pretty good. So let's make sure I grab my right piece. Right top. And then I'm going to put my glass jar underneath it, and I want to make sure that I get my overlap. Looks pretty good. It's a little bit tricky kind of getting it started, because you want to make sure that this thing is pulled the right direction, and that it's going to kind of line up. So I'm kind of analyzing how much of an overlap I'm going to have before I start gluing, just to make sure everything's going to look good. So I think I'm in pretty good shape. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually put a little bit of glue down to kind of get this anchored, at least on this side, and then I'm going to go to the other side and kind of do the same thing. So at least I kind of have this anchored. I didn't really glue down to the end yet, so I'll probably come back and do that. But I'll probably just keep going. And I'm going to get some more glue before I go further. And I think my jar is in the other room, so I am going to step out for just a second. I'll be right back. Fill my syringe back up with some HH66 vinyl cement. Wipe the excess glue off. Put my blunt needle back on. Seal that back up so I'm not breathing the toxic fumes. And then go back to gluing. So the jar kind of gives me something to curl the material over and kind of hold it in place. I can kind of preview, how it's going to lay for the next, 4 or 5 inches. And I can go ahead and put the glue down on one side or the other or both. I'm putting it down on the bottom right now. And I just saw how it was going to lay, so I kind of know that I can maintain my 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to go ahead and put glue for the first 1/2 inch. And I do peel back just a little bit and make sure that I don't have a gap in my glue. The jar gives you something to stretch across, which is great because sometimes you need to kind of stretch the material to get it to line up. The material does have a little bit of stretch to it. And then it gives you something, I'm using a glass jar, so it gives me something hard to kind of roll against. I got a little piece of PVC pipe with the painter's tape on it. And I'll continue to keep rolling the same spots for the next 30 minutes. It has about that long of a work time. If you're unhappy, you can peel it slowly back and rework it if you need to. Pull it back just a little bit, and then keep going. It is really kind of lovely to build your own suit because you kind of know that you're going to get to wear it, and you're going to get to transform into this pretty cool thing eventually once you finish it. If you like pool toys, then you will get to transform into one once you get it finished. I love this material. This is from Inflatable World. All their stuff is really, really soft and flexible, real gummy. Kind of almost feels like latex. It's some of the nicest material. They obviously put a lot of plasticizer in it. All right, I need to make sure that I'm going to continue to line up with this. I might have to kind of use my fingers here instead of the jar, because it looked like it was wanting to kind of go off, or diverge, I should say. And I need to kind of work it back. You can always work with something like this that comes to a spot like that. Instead of the jar, you can kind of use like this is a big glass marble, and use it to kind of roll against. You can add more glue up under. If you've got little buckles or puckers. I'll use a paper towel to kind of push against this to sop up any of that extra glue that I just put down. So they probably keep coming back to this spot in the next 30 minutes and just making sure that it lays flat. Because I kind of did a little bit of a course correction for my seam. And it looks like I probably need to do a little bit more because it's still trying to kind of diverge a little bit. I want to try to get it back on track. Want to maintain this half-inch overlap. So when you're doing this kind of stuff, it's all about how you hold it, and you kind of have to figure out, your own technique to get things to line up. But it's all about how you kind of hold it and how you turn the material. Kind of push from underneath to kind of get it to curve, how you want it to. The glass jar usually works pretty well. I also want to look at the back, because you might have like a wrinkle or something that you don't necessarily feel. You can always, you can come back later and fill in some of these little puckers and stuff, or you can do it as you're going. If you see them, if you see it where it's kind of puckered up a little bit, you can add just a little bit of extra glue and all right. So now that I've made that turn, it looks like I can probably start using the jar to kind of get this to line up again. Excellent, excellent. Peel it back just a little bit. Make sure I don't have a gap, and then I'm going to do a little bit longer stretch here since it looks like it's going to line up pretty well. Kind of stretch it across. PVC pipe. Roll that out. I'd love to get Rebecca or one of our other crafters to go live. It'd be neat. It's everybody kind of has a little bit different technique, just to kind of see the differences. We share definitely a lot of ideas and stuff, but definitely everybody, it's kind of an art. Everybody's got a different way of doing things. There's not necessarily a right way. There's some good ideas, some good tricks, and I'm always learning new techniques and stuff from some of the other crafters. It's kind of my hope to kind of just get a big community of people that want to craft, and basically they make the money and are there for the benefit of the community. That's really the whole idea of CCK is I love this stuff and I want to be able to make it available for other people, and I have no real desire to make any money off of it besides just keeping it afloat and making sure that all the people that are doing the hard work are getting paid good so we can keep them around. Hope I can keep growing it and getting more people involved, and we can help other people that are interested in pool toys and becoming a pool toy to have that ability, and also to do repairs and things like that, make toys. So before I go too far, I have a little bit left on that side. I want to go ahead and start doing the other side just to kind of see how things are lining up. And so to do that, I guess I could probably keep it the same way, or I could rotate this whole thing 180 degrees if I want to work on it from that angle. It's all about figuring out what works for you and figuring out your process and technique. good to always kind of look into the future with your seam to see how it's going to continue to line up, so that you can pull it loose while it's still pretty wet if you need to kind of, if it's going to start diverging, you want to probably correct for that as early as you can catch it. Otherwise, you may have to peel back or do some heavy course correcting like I just did a little while ago. I'm going to go ahead and take this off. I know that I'm on the right side. And it's better to not have your tape on there for too long. All right, things look like they're coming together pretty good. Looks like my cross seam is going to line up on this side and on this side, just, for kind of a visual. Just try to get a nice even distribution of glue, not too much, but not too little. You want enough to wet it out, but you don't want it squishing out all over the place. And then, of course, you don't want too little, because then you'll have problems with getting a seal and possibly coming apart later on. And you want to put it down while it's still wet. If I take too much time here, then the stuff that I put down first will dry and not bond very well. You can also kind of double check yourself to see, are you getting the spacing that you were looking for? And it looks like I'm actually getting, I was looking for 4 inches, I'm getting 4.5. That's okay. Better more than less. Always peel back before you glue a little bit more to make sure you don't have a gap. You can even kind of roll your previous seams a little bit as you're in the area. You've got about half an hour, you can kind of keep working on them and working out any bubbles or wrinkles. The more pressure, the better the bond. Kind of a loose end here, I can add some glue to that. So here's, I don't know if you can see real well, but there's the seam here and here, so it looks like it lines up pretty well. That's a really nice little check. What that tells me is that I didn't accidentally put more like a longer seam on this side versus this side, that things are lining up, because otherwise you could get to the end and then have a bunch of excess material to deal with. So it's good to kind of have checks as you go that things are lining up. Especially, that's part of why I started doing one side, then I stopped, and I started doing the other side, then I stopped. Because that way, as I get down towards the bottom, I can kind of make sure that things are coming together, and then I can kind of stretch as needed to get things to come together. Since you got a little bit of stretch in the material, you can kind of use that to take up some slack if you need to. Or you can kind of reposition how you overlap. You could overlap a little more, a little less, and pull the material, this patch kind of to one side or the other just a little bit. So there's different ways you can kind of work with it to fix problems that you foresee. So I'll probably switch back to this other side for a minute. I could probably do just a little bit more here. In fact, I'm switching now to putting glue on this side of the material instead. It doesn't really matter which side you put the glue on. I'll switch back over here to this side now. I keep a paper towel that I like to put my needle down on so I'm not getting glue all over PVC that doesn't need to have glue on it. So I try to get in the habit of having that under it every time I set it down. I think I'll just keep working it little by little on each side as I get down. Peel it back just a little bit, make sure I don't have a gap in my glue. Kind of takes looking at it in the right light to see your glue since it's clear. So as I get down to the end here, hopefully things are going to kind of line up, I can maybe take the jar out for a second, just kind of check this out, see how this is going to come together. In fact, I might take my little scissors, if I can find them. There they are. And there's a little bit of a notch in my on the edge of my material right here. I can kind of cut that and make it straight, since this is something you'll see. All right, now let's see if I keep going here at about a 1/2 inch. I'm going to end up actually a little bit short, and I'm not going to be too fussed. I can add a little bit more material there. I won't be too fussed about that. Although, let's see, I could bring this together a little bit sooner, because I think that has kind of torn just a little bit. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll bring it together a little bit sooner. I'll still have to add probably a little bit of material under that end, but that looks pretty good. That's coming together pretty well. I kind of maintain a 1/2 inch of the glue, but I may make a little bit more than that. I can always come back and, yeah, especially right in here, it's going to be a little more, but that's okay. I can always come back and add a little bit where it's not glued down on the edge. Sometimes I flip sides to gluing this underside. It just depends on what's easiest to get to. As long as one side's got glue. You can even do both sides if you really want to. Peeling it back to make sure I get a good seam with no gap. So this suit will probably take a good couple weeks to finish. The hood or the dragon head part is already done, but there's a lot to these. A lot of material has to be added. Um, so I'm only adding right now the right panel, or I guess it's the left panel if you're wearing the suit, to the outer layer. I got to also do a right panel and then a back panel, and then I have to do those same things to the inner layer as well. And then once I'm done with that, I have to reinforce all of the body seams. So there's a good bit of work involved in these. So if people sometimes wonder why they're $1,200, well, that's because it's a lot of freaking work. And you know, people are making $20 an hour doing this work for me. This is one I'm building myself. We're actually doing another one. One of our other crafters is building one of these exact same suits. I think she's actually almost done. And it's for somebody else. Alright, so the last little bit here, trying to figure out, you know, how this is going to come together. It's all about how you angle the material to work with it to get it to do what you want it to do. So I may actually kind of rotate this. When it kind of comes to some of the difficult sections, it's best to try to get your best angle so that you can work. Because it can be fairly frustrating if you don't have the right angle and the material's not cooperating. So the best thing to do is get the material to lay and cooperate before you start trying to glue. And so that's kind of what I'm doing here. Is like, okay, let's get this to kind of lay and come together how I want it to before I start trying to make this come together with glue. So let's see if I can get this to kind of do what I want it to do. Yeah, I think so. I think I can get it to come together for sure on that side. So I might go ahead and stick my needle under here and try to get glue. I'm going to push it to the right to make sure that I don't have a gap. I'm kind of pushing into where it was glued before and adding glue. And I'm gonna get it under there again, add some more. Flip it to the other side as well, to the back side, and I can get glue in from the other side of the overlap, because I may not be able to reach everything I need to. Even if you can't get glue under the whole overlap, if you can just get it under some of it to get it to stay, that might be all that you need to do, and then you can come back and add more glue to it. So, you know, this is kind of the critical piece here, is trying to get it to finally come together at the very end. We've done this whole panel, and now we're at the last little bit. And it looks like I might have a little patch of material I need to add down there, and that's okay. I'll do that on the inside. Basically, it's, I don't know if you can see it, it's basically right there. There's about a 3/8 of an inch. I'll try to go ahead and get these to come together so that it's just a little skinny slit. Might need to pull up just a little bit of that to get this to change direction. Yeah, there we go. Nice. All right, so at least I got it together. There's a little bit of a, probably about 3/8 to 1/2 inch slit, but I'll put some material behind that to close that off. But I think what I'll do right now is go around and roll this all really good and check the back side to see if these, especially down in this area, if these need a little more glue from the back side. And I guess I need to check also here at the top. If I flip it to the back side, you can see where the very beginning didn't really get started. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that. In fact, I could probably trim it a little bit. If I can find my little scissors, or big scissors, get some better organization. Here's another pair. What I can do is kind of round this instead of being square. Corners don't really like to stay glued, so it's good to have it rounded. All right, peel it back a little bit, make sure I don't have a gap. And I am going to glue all of this down. Kind of putting my fingernail along the seam here because there's a bump. The factory seam kind of has a little bit of a bump. It's always hard to glue over a bump. If it's a real big bump, you can take a razor blade and kind of shave it down a little bit. So now I'm looking at the back side of my overlap seam and just kind of checking the edges. You can kind of try to peel them up a little bit. See if you have any places that need to have glue added. Here's a good spot. Looks like there's a little bit of a wrinkle, and I can get my needle under here. Inject a bunch of glue and use a paper towel to kind of sop it up, and then just put some pressure on it. It should kind of spread out, and you can even kind of slide it back and forth to help stretch it out. It's a lot easier to just take the time to make sure that these overlaps are glued all the way to the edges, because if you go ahead and take the time, then you won't have to worry about finding and fixing leaks later on. It'll just be airtight right off the bat. Especially if you take your time on any bumps going over factory seams. If you go ahead and spend the time to kind of dig your fingernail or some kind of a hard flat object like a really, I'd probably not metal, but like the edge of the syringe actually works pretty good if you don't have a good set of fingernails. Just something to kind of dig in there along that bump, you know, along both sides of it to get the glue to bond so that there's not a gap. So that's typically where all the holes always end up being, is going over a factory seam. So I got just a little bit of a small hole to patch right here. And I've got some material, so I can just go ahead and cut out a little patch. And then after this, I think I'll take a break and then I'll do the other side. So there we go. Now before I do this, there is a factory seam here with a little flap on it. And I want to glue that flap down. just whichever way the flap is going, I'm just going to put glue behind it. Because I don't want there to be air that leaks out through that little area behind the flap. But if it's glued to itself, if it's glued down, then it should be an airtight. Because if I just simply glued this over it and I didn't glue the flap down, then air could get up under there and out. This is small enough I could just go ahead and coat the whole thing and then put it down. Now really, the only thing left to do on this panel is just roll it really good. And so I'll probably spend the next few minutes rolling it. You could roll it from the front, the back, both, whatever you want to do. You could use a brayer, or if you don't have anything, you could use a roll of tape. Use my little piece of PVC pipe and roll it like this. Get all the wrinkles to lay flat, the air bubbles to push out. Working my fingernail there where I'm overlapping another piece of material just along the edge. I kind of push my fingernail there into the edge to get a good bond. I don't want a little tiny leak. So this is panel number 1 of 3 for one layer. So for both layers, there's 6. So I've got 1 panel out of 6 done. So I got 5 more panels to do, and then I got to reinforce all the seams, and then I got to put a zipper on it, and then I have to attach the 2 suits together around the zipper. And also I got to attach the tops of the arms together and then the bottoms of the feet together, so they kind of stay together as one unit. And then I also, since I have a removable head, I'll have to put another zipper around the neck and seal both of them together around the neck. All right, I think I'm going to take a break, and I'll come back to that later.